Good morning, Facebook family. It is Thursday morning, and on the 5-Star Real Estate calendar, that means it's the 10,000 Club morning. Today, we have Kim Anderson here with us and Crystal Hollick. She is one of our agents out of Ludington, soon to be Hart, right, Crystal?
Yay, yes.
I know, we're all excited to have another office along the lake shore. So she drives a little bit further north to Ludington for the time being, but in no time at all, she'll be fortunate enough to have an office right in her hometown area. So anyways, welcome, Krista. Kim and I and Cindy Beckwith were dreaming yesterday about what kind of content we might have for today. So today's, we're going to be talking about... Thanks to Greg's wife, Joyce, I have a little magnifying glass, but we're going to be talking about finding your inner sleuth. So I think that means something different for all of us. But we're going to be talking about that today. But first, I wanted to take a minute to introduce Crystal and have her tell us a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone. So I am Crystal Hollick. I live in Hart. I travel actually between Whitehall and Ludington. Depends on if I want to go to the big city. I have been an agent since, I think it was 2014. I have worked for, this is my third and last brokerage. I have been on the MOM Board of Realtors, which is the Manistee, Mason, Oceana County Board of Realtors. I was Oceana County Director the last 3 years, which was strange with our COVID.
Mm.
I have been on different committees. I am still on committees. I like to be in the mix of the board because you get to meet all different kinds of people that you work with all of the time. You don't get to speak to them, you know, outside of work very often. So I like to get to meet people and go to the different functions that the board offers. I like to go to the Michigan Realtors Convention, fun things like that. When you're on the board, you get to do all of those great things and learn. And I like to share my knowledge.
Well, good.
I guess that's a little bit about me.
Good. How long have you been at 5-Star?
June will be 1 year.
Nice. Nice. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have someone who is so well connected say yes to this great brokerage who we all know and love. And so we feel fortunate to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Well, good. So inner sleuth, what does it mean? Like I said, I'm like, okay, what does the term mean? Like we all think of Sherlock Holmes. That's Kim. I was trying to think of who it was, and Kim immediately said yesterday, Sherlock Holmes.
I was sending her the emojis and the GIFs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
I couldn't get her to buy into a trench coat and a hat, though.
Yeah, this is when we really missed Don Phelan. He would have definitely, I said, if I would have been at home, I would have had a cool hat, but I'm in Northern Michigan. But Don would have been all over this. Like, we would have had an opening act, but the term sleuth means to search for information or to discover. And so, I try to teach the agents that have been on my team, and now I'm doing this and helping all of our newer agents, teaching them how to dig in and find information. And so in talking with Crystal earlier this week, she brought to the forefront a story of some really great detective work that she had to do to help a client. And I think for each of us, detective work looks different, right, Kim?
Absolutely. Yep. I think it's such a foundational principle to everything that we do, right? And I'm a believer that I want to know ahead of time about the transaction as much as I possibly can. When we hear Crystal's story, you'll see how she had to go 1 inch at a time, right? We talked about a little here, a little there. So absolutely. Yep.
So again, where we start is, not always where we think we're going to end, and what trail we go down sometimes is not the right trail. Sometimes we have to shift. It's like when you're trying to find that buyer of the house and they think they know what they want, right? And then next thing you know, you're looking at a unicorn that looked nothing like before we started, Crystal, I'm sure you've been there. But
unicorns, yes.
yes, exactly. We're all looking for a unicorn right now, but nonetheless. So Crystal, you had this amazing story that you shared with me. So, there's that Reader's Digest version because
I'm
this
going to
one's
give the
a long
cliff
one.
notes.
So when we talked about it, Crystal, how long did this transaction take you from beginning to end?
2.5 years.
Okay, so 2.5 years of really good work. So Crystal, I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay. I definitely have the Cliff Notes version. I made a list. So I had clients that decided they needed to end their marriage. And the first time I was involved was doing a CMA for divorce court.
Okay.
So they had an appraiser there as well. So thankfully they didn't call upon me because court is scary.
Yeah.
I don't like to be there. It's very intimidating.
Yeah, and you're a realtor, right? Like
right.
That's not what we
Why
do.
am I here?
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. I don't want to give you all of my information. So thankfully they used the appraiser on that instead of my CMA, but I was there and I was subpoenaed to be there. So that was my very first into the mix. I mean, granted, there were a few years prior to that we had interaction, but that was my first So after divorce court, they did their divorce stuff, and there was a separation of things, and there was money allotted to a spouse. The spouse hadn't paid that for 2 years. So the other spouse goes back to court and says, hey, I haven't gotten my money. And the other client called me up and said, I need you to sell this house. I said, I can't just sell someone else's house. That's not how this works. I need something from the court that says I can sell this house. Back to court I go. I never thought in my life that if you're paying your mortgage, you're paying your taxes, someone can tell you, you have to sell your home. But that's what happened. The judge said, you've had all of this time to pay this. So that was the marital home, and we're going to sell that and pay your debts.
So to break it down, there's a divorce. The divorce proceedings have been completed. There was a divorce decree, and in the decree, he was to pay someone else a sum of money. And that had not been done. So the owner of the home was one person, but not both people, correct, is what you're saying? So there was one rightful owner and there were some monies that were owed. Okay, sounds good.
Correct. Okay. So the judge made this court order, and the owner of the home never went to any of these court proceedings. So the judge kept adding on orders. I said, I was at all of these court hearings. The last 7 months, it was once a month, I was in Zoom court. The judge said, okay, you have to sell the home. Crystal Halleck with 5-Star Real Estate is to sell the home. The other person is allowed to sign all of the papers, because I said, I can't do a listing without the paperwork. It has to be proper paperwork. Then it came down to, he won't allow me in the home. How can I get fair market value and sell the home without photos or having people look at the home? So that was another court order. Then there was a court order of removal of the person in the home by police action. And I had to go to the state police, the county police, the city police, and process servers. So I am calling the courthouse. I'm calling all of these people, and they're all saying, no, it's this person that does that. No, it's this person. It's that person.
Because
so,
you don't know this. You don't know when you go into these things where you're supposed to be. You don't know who you're supposed to call. So you end up going down some rabbit holes that sometimes don't lead anywhere.
Correct. And because it was in the city, you start with the state, and then you go to the county, and then you go to the city, but they all say, no, we don't do that. You have to go somewhere else. You have to go to
Right.
this person, that person.
Right.
The moral to the story is another court order. I can't get into the house to take photos. He isn't leaving. You have to evict a person. And even if you have a court order that says all of that. So the last court date, he did decide he was going to show up. So he was supposed to cooperate and didn't very well, but I still had the court order saying the other person could sign all of the papers. At the end of the day, he allowed me to go in there and take photos. I couldn't, they had to be there for showings. I couldn't put a lockbox on, but I was taking what I could get to get it done. I ordered title work during all of this stuff. A lien from the Attorney General of the state of Michigan is on there. So I said,
I'm sensing
what
that.
is that?
How often do you call the Attorney General for the state of Michigan, Crystal? I mean, do you have them on speed dial on your phone normally?
Yeah. And of course, there are many assistants to the Attorney General.
Mhm.
So who do you talk to for that? You have to, again, call the first person and go down the line. Who takes care of this? How do I get this lien off? How do we pay this? So that was another sleuthing moment.
Excellent.
During COVID time, where everyone is working from home and no one knows anything, you just have to keep at it, keep calling. I had my inner CSI for sure.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, so in the end, were you able to sell the house?
I was able to sell the home. And he was allowed 7 days after possession and still did not leave. So I helped out there and wrote the check that was owed. So there was no other action. And he left on the 8th day.
So you paid the buyer for so many days of possession for a
Yes.
home that he overstayed his welcome.
Yes.
Well, what would Greg Carlson say about that, Kim Anderson?
He says, write the check, right? We're always trying to find a win-win for everybody. And we need to look at the energy, the cost, the time it would take to be right. Sometimes we just write the check and be done with it. He always recommends we say 10% of our check, our commissions, or a certain percentage always set back in a fund, because when a problem comes up, we have a solution. And sometimes it's getting out our checkbook.
Right.
Absolutely.
And these are the lasting moments inside of a transaction, right? This is
Yes.
the end.
Yes.
They
You've
don't
got
care
2.5
what happened.
Yeah. 2.5
I
years.
have to work, right. I have to work with the buyer's agent for the rest of my life, because I'm never going to do anything else. I don't want that buyer's agent to think that I'm a terrible person because I'm not a problem solver.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's a really great example of some really great sleuthing and literally digging in. I can't imagine the amount of energy and time that this took, Crystal, for you to represent really both clients, one who was willing and the other who was unwilling, because at the end of the day, everything you did was on behalf of really two people, the person who was told to sell it and the person that should have sold it. But at the end of the day, both parties were winners, whether they agreed with, the resolution. When you decide not to participate in what's being required of you, a court will force you. And in this case, that did happen. So I'm sure there's a lot of lessons here that we can all take from that. And just knowing the example that Crystal gave, that you just don't know when you start a transaction and you meet people and they're getting divorced and everything seems fine, you have you have no idea. I mean, I signed a listing agreement with a client one time and she died 2 days later. So that was a very interesting turn of events. Thankfully, I had done sales where someone had passed away, but in this case, I had literally been with this person and then she passed away before the house went live. So that was interesting. So I was going to tell a story today. I used this on the Stump the Deal Doctors a while ago, but about 6 years ago, I did a transaction. It was a young couple. It was a FHA loan. And just when we were waiting for our clear to close, excuse me, and they were going in for their final, look at things, the lender. I'm trying to think what they call that. Sometimes there's a word for it that lenders use. But anyway, so right before the clear to close, they do this final check of everything. And they come up with something called a Cavers error, and it's spelled Caivrs, Cavers. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. My clients didn't know what that was. The lender didn't know what that was. Greg Carlson didn't know what that was. I didn't know what it was. So you start Googling. So in the end, Cavers error is a flag, if you will, that the federal government puts against someone's social security number. So it's something that kind of happens in the background that we can't see. But if you try to go and close on a loan that's backed by the federal government, and you have not paid a debt to the federal government somewhere in your lifetime, and in this case, it ended up being a student loan. That was a federally backed student loan. And in actuality, this is where, the sleuthing skills come in. The client had paid it off. She had been in default of that loan at some point in her life, but it had been satisfied and paid off. She, of course, was a young person, had moved lots of times, didn't have the discharge, had no clue where it was, and the federal government was shut down. So that was my really interesting tale of nobody knew what it was. Then we figure out what it was. Then we go to the client, she's got nothing. Then you go to the federal government, and it was like you, Crystal. There's the assistant to the assistant to the assistant, but no one answers the phone because the government is shut down. So in the end, we ended up getting it. And it's just, I can't imagine that feeling that you had, Crystal, when you finally closed that deal.
It was amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
2.5 years of your life on one transaction. I had to drive 50 miles every time I went to this other town.
Yeah.
So it was fabulous. I'm very thankful.
Yep. And the word I like to use is win, right? We want our clients to win. And sometimes it takes 2.5 years, agent community. It might take 2.5 years to win. But at the end of the day, mine was not 2.5 years, but it was stressful because people are trying to get out of apartments, and there's so much emotion that's wrapped up into these moments. And so what we want to do is we want to teach our agent community to be really good, resourceful people, to be really good at finding your inner sleuth and knowing that it's going to look different each time. But finding your inner sleuth means, searching for things as simple as square footage. Kim, where do you go to find square footage?
Right. And that's a pretty common question. So there's a few ways, and this is going to be some of the skills that we need to learn, especially when we first come into real estate, is how do I verify a home? How do I verify what is the square footage of the home? So most agents will first look at the previous listing, right? Yeah. Well, how do we know that previous listing is accurate? So even though we have the little copy button, we need to go through every single field and update it and make sure it's correct. It could be a little bit of a crutch, but you can never rely on that. Then we can go to their tax records, BSA software. We can go, which will link you to the local municipality. Often they will have floor plans there. So you can do that. Or there's the old way of getting out the measuring tape, right?
Crystal, have you ever got the measuring tape out? I haven't. I have
My
not.
husband bought me a digital one.
I have
a
one.
Laser one that I can just point it at the wall.
Yes. And we have to remember, if we measure the box of a house, it's measuring the garage, right? So the garage is not finished square feet. So it has to be finished square feet with heat, utilities, right? I was thinking of an example while Tracy was talking. Actually, I just closed this transaction. And as we got to the closing table, we discovered that the taxes were really high. So in this case, my buyer decided to close, and we are in the process of fighting it now. But the home sold at $250, and the taxes were at $508. based on 508,000. And so what had happened, so I got out my little magnifying glass, what's going on here? And I went back and I started searching to where this parcel came from, which I knew it was a split. So that's where I can't just call up somebody and get an answer.
Yeah.
Good for me. The listing agent said, oh, let me take you to the right place. He goes, I go, how do you know all this? He goes, I just did it. So what we're doing now is we're fighting that the taxable value or the equalized value, right? Yeah. And so we have to go through the process. So what I discovered was that usually there is information on the website. So I went to the local township and said, procedure for disputing the tax amount. So we've done that, like Crystal said, or like we were just talking about the government, they're little communities. You better know what days are they in, what days do they answer, what days because it might be Thursday from 9 to 10, so you just, there is no quick answer. That's what we're trying to convey here today is we have to keep out the magnifying glass. I did contact that assessor. He's not helping us. I also discovered that we just missed the annual dispute date by a couple of days.
Yeah, that just passed.
It just passed. And so once again, just getting out that magnifying glass and keep asking questions. I always say the quality of the answers we receive are built into the questions we ask. Right?
So profound, Miss Kim.
Yes, just you have to figure out, there are no questions. And sometimes it takes one question to get you to the next question, to the next answer, the next question. And I believe that's what Crystal probably had to do. Tracy had never heard of this. Greg Carlson had never heard of this error. And you have to keep looking. A lot of times Google will get us started, usually, right? Okay. The internet's a great resource. Yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah, good. I also think about the title company. So some people will do pre-listing packages, before they go on a listing, if they don't know much about the house, or they're not able through discovery using RPR or Realist or BSNA, they can't find out a lot about the house. Or maybe the person who said they want to meet with you is not the person's name you see on BSNA. Has that ever happened to you guys?
Oh, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
So it's like, what do you do? So, to me, you could order pre-title work. And then when the pre-title work comes, what kinds of things can we learn in pre-title work, you guys?
Right.
Liens from the Attorney General.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You can. So, Star Title can be your friend. They can help you before you actually get a client under contract, a listing under contract. When we think about lenders and when they're ready to close, after the buyer has applied for their mortgage, they'll issue what's called the conditions to close. And so we know when we don't often get these, sometimes the lender will share, the conditions to close are like 5 things they might tell me, and bank statements or whatever. They might just tell you what it is, but we don't actually receive those. The buyer or the future borrower receives those. But in a title situation, when I call Star Title and I order my title work, they're going to send me my title work, and in there will be my conditions to close. That's sort of my list of, hey, Tracy, if you want to get this deal closed, you need to make sure that your buyer provides these things. So when we talk about those kinds of things that could be in there, Crystal just said liens. What are some other things that could be in title work?
Often it might be in a trust. So we need to know who has the power to sign for the trust.
Yep.
It could be in an LLC. Here's what I want to say. The title company, I feel like often is the least the least document that gets, it's a document that gets the least attention.
Yeah.
But it is one of the most, it has to be cleared in order to close, right? Title is your best friend. And we have an amazing Star Title team. I love the 2 that I work directly with in Kalamazoo. Kelly and Kevin are the best, absolutely every time. Yeah. I can walk in there and Kevin will drop what he's doing. So will Kevin. So we could find, is it in a trust? Is it in an LLC? The biggest thing is who owns the property? Yes. Are there mortgage? Sometimes there are judgments. Sometimes they're in foreclosure, right?
Tax liens.
Tax liens, yeah.
You could be, I'm getting ready to list a property where one of the spouses has been deceased for 20 years, but his name's still on title. So we're going to need to dig through some records or go down to the courthouse,
Right.
get a copy of the death certificate, because we all know that Uncle Joe has passed away, right? But
Right.
his name is still on the deed.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, and that title work, we have had situations where somebody signed the listing agreement and even went pending and got further down, kicked the can, and found out that person did not have authority to sign for that property. And those end up in court usually. The buyer and the buyer's agent do not understand why you didn't know.
Right.
So it's really important, especially as fast as homes close, get on the market and close. Often title work isn't back. I do order mine ahead of time if there's any question to it.
yeah,
It's really
especially in a situation where you've got mom and dad who have passed away, and as Kim alluded to, there could be a trust. Well, we need a copy of the trust, and we not
Yes.
only need a copy of the trust, we need originals, like signatures, original signatures. So without those, this cannot close. So those
Right.
will be in the conditions to close from the title company. But it'll also say, like, Crystal, have you ever done a listing where there were multiple people who were selling the home, but there was only one person that wanted to sign it? And then you realize later, like, well, wait a second. Now here's the trust. It says you got 3 brothers and sisters, and like, you're all on this. So everybody needs to sign.
I have
Yeah.
better yet. I have listed a home that someone had received from the death of parents, listed it for him, pulled title work, and an ex-girlfriend was on the deed. He could not even list his own home.
See, this is the kind of things you learn when you do things in a proper order, and you use the resources that are in front of you to help you get from the beginning to the end. So,
And
well,
we just never know, right, Tracy? We never know what's going to come up. That's why it's really good to do all the front end, do everything you can and know everything. Besides, we're the pro. We get paid a lot of money to do this job.
right.
And we're the pro. And if you say, I'm not the pro, well, we have to become it, right? That's how we become the pro, is by learning. Now, Crystal has an experience that she will never forget, right? Tracy will always know what is it, a Cavers?
Cavers.
Cavers is.
Cavers.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to find out how to fight your taxes here real quick. So, you know, you're always learning, and you go, wow, they're so wise. They're so smart. We've done a lot of sleuthing, right?
Yep.
Every day you learn something in real estate, every single day.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's just it. I can remember calling Greg years ago, and he would say, well, never heard of that one before. Never heard of that one before. But then I realized, you know what? There is no way to know everything. You will never know everything. You just won't. And that's the beauty of the business. There's an aha moment almost in every day. So, well, Crystal, thank you for coming and joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Talking to us about your inner sleuth and how you have grown this piece of your life that you never thought you needed to. And next week, we're going to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to talk about real practical ways that you can develop your inner sleuth and that you don't miss those things. It's also a good time to plug Ninja. Let's not forget about Ninja coming up. Crystal, are you going to Ninja?
I'm going.
I love it. Yay.
I can't wait.
I will tell you, I went the last time 5-star offered. I think it's been 3 years, and it literally changed the way I think and the way I do business. And if you aren't signed up, it is amazing, and you will come away with like more than you can contain, but you'll see the results, I believe, immediately by coming.
Yep. And you'll instantly be part of a community of people who begin thinking about the real estate life exactly like you. And they'll help you develop your skills to a higher level once you leave that place. So, well, great, Crystal. I'm glad you're going to be there. We'll also have the boot camp coming up, although I did not write down the date. Kim, do you remember the date of the boot camp?
I can look it up.
April 20th.
So we do have the boot camp coming up in Grand Rapids, a social media boot camp. And it's at Thousand Oaks Golf Club, because I'm getting notes from Emma in the background, which is great. Emma, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, what day? 28th.
It's April 28th.
Yep, at 9 a.m. at Thousand Oaks Golf Club, 9 to
Beautiful.
12.
Great, excellent. So keep that in mind. We'd love it if you could join us for that as well. And then the last thing is keep in mind, we are your broker support team. It's not just Kim and I, it is Doug Hale, Marissa Harrington, and Cindy Beckwith. We're here to help you. Call us, reach out for anything. We also have our deal doctors. I'm constantly saying, think of us as your 411 and them as your 911. So if you have a 411, reach out to us. If we're not reaching out to you, we appreciate you. And thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a
Crystal.
great day.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.